mission has always been, it kind of ties back to my story growing up with my brother who's non-speaking or nonverbal autistic. And he actually didn't express himself or share any words till the age of 27. And it's kind of like a Stephen Hawking story where it was technology that allowed him to share his first words and express that he was actually really smart, but just didn't have the right tools to express that. And that's what, inspired kind of the founding of this company. In terms of the journey, we fundraised from Sam Altman, who led our pre-seed round, as well as came back in our seed. With Sam, it was a, short 10-minute meeting. He was immediately like, all right, I have conviction, and he bought into the mission.
Hi, Jhillika. It's a pleasure to have you on my podcast. It's been a few weeks since we met during my San Francisco trip. Your company was sponsoring an event there, a vibe coding event. I learned a lot from it, and just from even vibe coding over 5 minutes, my startup idea that I'm working on, I was able to learn a lot. So yeah, thanks for hosting that. It's good to see you again.
Thanks for having me on the show, and it was so great to meet you as well at our event.
Sometimes people like kind of treat vibe coding as they don't take it too seriously, but I think just having done it during that workshop, just to be able to very quickly prototype something, even if eventually you do need developers, it was very helpful to just prototype and see what kind of pitfalls you might hit, and to see what the best route is. So that was very helpful for me. So thanks for sponsoring that.
Yeah, I've noticed vibe coding is so helpful for non-technical people as well as people who are managing teams, because then you can reasonably estimate like this shouldn't actually take this long. And like I could build this quickly and prototype it as a product manager as well. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
really changed the game.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good for product people. That's for sure. Okay, so yeah, of course we'll dive in and talk all about your startup Mentra, but just before we jump into that, do you mind just telling me a bit about your background? I know, of course, you did the classic pilgrimage out to Silicon Valley, so yeah, just tell me more about what led into that and up to that.
Sure, yeah. So I went to Georgia Tech. I grew up as an international student and then studied computer science and design, where I embarked on my entrepreneurial journey, having, applied to and gotten into Grace Hopper as their student of vision with this startup idea to build a more accessible hiring platform for people with non-traditional talents and skills. Spoke at Grace Hopper, at TEDx Georgia Tech, and then, later after graduating, applied for the Forbes 30 under 30 social impact and was able to kind of be a part of that community and network of people that are building really cool things that are driving their missions forward. But my mission has always been, it kind of ties back to my story growing up with my brother who's non-speaking or nonverbal autistic. And he actually didn't express himself or share any words till the age of 27. And it's kind of like a Stephen Hawking story where it was technology that allowed him to share his first words and express that he was actually really smart, but just didn't have the right tools to express that.
Yeah.
And that's what, inspired kind of the founding of this company, recognizing that there's actually a lot of potential out there and a lot of brilliant talent, but not the right kind of tools and technologies that can interface with how people's brains work differently. And so then, was in North Carolina for a bit, Atlanta for a bit, and my dream has always been to build in San Francisco, and kind of live that like quintessential startup journey out here. So I made the leap and moved out and, had to make a lot of changes with our team, with just lifestyle, with like the way that we've built the company. But so far, it's been totally worth it. I think I'm learning so quickly from other builders around like what tools are out here, how to run your startup effectively, just surrounded by people that are like in a similar, like driven, ambitious, like also highly risk taking mindset as well.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great story. So I'm curious, if you don't mind me asking, so was it technology that helped your brother able, it helped him to verbalize, or was it a combination of that and just different, just practice, or how'd that happen?
Yeah, it was so many things. It was like number one was the people. We had to first believe that he was intelligent and was competent, because a
Yeah.
lot of times we judge a person by their face value, and even if someone like doesn't give eye contact or behaves differently, we immediately assume some level of like incompetence when in reality like there might be a lot
Mhm.
happening in the brain, we just don't see it. So it's number one the people, two is the environment, making sure like it's a space where the nervous system can be more regulated, um, you know, the people around are also regulated. And then the third is, yeah, the technology or the tool. Initially, it started with a letterboard, so it really required someone who's very patient, sitting with him, putting a letterboard in front of him, and him like moving his hand letter by letter, which actually takes like hours for him to do when he started, to then gravitating to like more of the iPad and using the keyboard there. So it was a mix of environment, people, and technology. But when all that came together, he started to write, and he published his first book a few months ago called The Cacophony of Silence. And his name is the Silent Poet Vic on Instagram. And so now he's sort of writing and expressing more, and has finally kind of found a medium to share his talent. And, how can we make that possible for everyone? Because there's so many people out there that are brilliant that are waiting and yearning to find their purpose. So, yeah, thanks for asking, Brendan.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I wouldn't have thought that. I mean, most of us, we start off speaking and then we go into writing, but for him it was the other way around. So he found writing to be easier at first, and then from that he was able to speak.
Well, he doesn't speak given like there's sort of like a brain body disconnect happening. So even though he's thinking things
Oh, okay, I see, I see.
mouth move, like it just there's the neural connections, are
I got you. Yeah,
yeah, so it's more of using the iPad's, voice to speech to text or text to speech to be able
got it.
to speak, which he, like, can select his own voice now, and he can, share, like, long paragraphs or short words. Eventually, I'm so excited to when we get to a point as humanity where we have, like, brain computer interfaces or brain machine interfaces so that he just has to think, and then it will express, or just, like, look at letters using eye gaze tracking and express. So I can't wait for that tech to be available to him as well, because then it moves so much faster and the latency is lower.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that'll be amazing. It does seem oftentimes in the health tech industry that the leading edge of it is often people that have to overcome some kind of disability or something, and then they have to use technology to get around it, but then that ends up kind of pushing the bounds of that technology space, and ultimately it's helpful for everyone. So that'll be good to see how that develops. But yeah, just moving on from so yeah, you were inspired by your brother's success, and then that led you into Mentra. Tell me more about how what Mentra is and how that developed.
Yeah, so think of it like a Duolingo to find your ideal career as a job seeker. So we map people on their path to first understanding like what their cognitive strengths are, what their hobbies are, how they can apply that into the workforce of the future, especially with AI. There's just all these new areas that are booming in AI engineering, even like sales and customer success, and then beyond into like AI ethics and morality as we start to kind of have AI governing a lot more of the technological infrastructure out there. So, how do we map the strengths that people have to those jobs of the future? And so that's kind of the job seeker experience from it's a B2B to C. So from the recruiter employer side, think of it like a LinkedIn for the neurodiverse. And so we're making this talent pool and database that has never before been this easily accessible for people, a lot of time because of like data sensitivity. But we've, really built trust with this community, and we've identified, how people think different and surface that to companies. So we call it like finding the unicorn talent. And it's really just the goal is to find the signal in the noise, right? There's so much talent out there, but how do you find like that right person with the right skills for the job you're looking for? And so, yeah, that's what the platform does. In terms of the journey, we fundraised from Sam Altman, who led our pre-seed round, as well as came back in our seed. We have been building this now and working with large enterprises like Microsoft, Amazon, Boeing, Honeywell, Trellix. So we've really helped kind of build this out at scale and help these companies also think about neuro inclusion in a different way, to be able to build like processes and change management around considering that 1 in every 5 employees might already be neurodivergent. So how do you have hiring managers that know and are trained and are understanding of those differences and accommodating, as well as recruiters? So it's really like a wide scale systems change that we're embarking on, starting with the tools to be able to do that effectively.
Okay, so let me just make sure that I understand the core concept. I'm pretty sure I do. So it's basically a way to uncover talent for people that might be neurally divergent, where people may, misunderstand them at first. Like you said with your brother, they actually do have a lot of talent. It's hard to uncover it. But this is like a social network or a LinkedIn type of platform that allows them to connect with other people and ideally get a job ultimately, or is it more about connecting with people with professionals?
Yes, connecting people with jobs. So we every day surface one job for a candidate to apply to, that we believe would be a really good fit for them. So unlike LinkedIn, where you're kind of bombarded with opportunities, we curate it for individuals using AI. And yeah, we get them to apply, and then we work with the recruiter and hiring manager to make sure they're giving feedback and moving job seekers through the process and making sure it's like smooth and cognitively accessible for every user. So it's a much, much better candidate experience, is kind of what we're shooting for here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one thing I'm imagining is that I mean, different people might have a different kind of neural divergences. So how do you know is there a certain way for or different paths for people that have different neurodivergences to take that you recommend? Like, say, someone like your brother, if it's more verbal, he goes, joins a certain maybe community or something that have people with similar issues, or maybe there's certain industries that it's really not a hindrance for someone who has the verbal issues to be in that industry, and so it makes sense for them to apply to jobs in that space.
It's so dependent on someone's like abilities and challenges. So, for example, right now we're very focused in tech, so mostly software engineering, data science, cybersecurity, UX
Okay.
design. A lot of those roles aren't necessarily requiring, someone who is in person and is like able to speak at all times. Like a lot of times, these roles are like, nighttime, building at different hours of day from your own, like remote. And so it's making like a pathways into these roles a lot easier. In terms of like how we optimize, so it's really not based on diagnosis, and it's more based on those skills and challenges. So if someone, for example, has ADHD and is really like socially savvy, then some a role in sales or customer success might be really strong. And if they have like systems thinking and process oriented thinking, like maybe CS is the move. Whereas if someone's more mechanical and good at following details and can hyper focus for long periods of time and thinks in a more logical way, then maybe it is software engineering, cybersecurity. It's really understanding that. And then, yeah, we've like rephrased it. So there aren't necessarily issues, more so like
Right.
challenge, right? That someone has to like overcome. So, what are roles that have like lower barriers without running into those challenges? And so once we understand, okay, someone, really needs to see information in written instructions, or they need, long breaks in between their day, or they need to work remote, or they need to, support their child every day as a single parent. Like a lot of these things we try to understand and lead with empathy so that with the hiring manager, they're aware too that, okay, if I'm able to optimize these factors, this employee can actually be like 10x more productive than the average just because they're being supported in ways that they need to be. And maybe they just like need, 2 days of heads down time, but they're able to produce like outperform their peers. Then like sure, give them that time. It's not a doesn't take away from the company as long as they're like performing. So I think we're moving into a world that's a lot more output driven rather than like time intensive. And so, given those outputs, it's like anyone who has a skill there can perform the task. They don't necessarily need to, you know, speak every day or show up in an office and be constantly attentive. Like, there's all these different ways of working now that work for everyone. So, yeah, it's like very tailored to how someone thinks and perceives their environment in that way.
Yeah, I love the idea of really focusing on the strengths because really that's I mean a lot of the jobs you mentioned there's specialized skills, and so even if there's something that's challenging, as long as you can ultimately accomplish that task, then that's what matters. And this reminds me of how with a lot of the capabilities of these AIs and LLMs and stuff, we've started to learn more about intelligence, and well, we've realized that a lot of times we have the wrong benchmark, right? Like we're not even measuring the right thing, and so it's not really a good way to evaluate the model. And I feel like it's a similar concept here where we're not looking at the right benchmark. Someone kind of is neurodivergent, they do things a bit differently, and then so we're not evaluating them correctly. But if we shifted our mindset, our benchmark, oh, it turns out they can accomplish that task just as well as someone else. So yeah, that's great.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, I think the industry hasn't been measuring. I mean, it's very based on like keywords, years of experience, education, like those have been the traditional factors. But so much like now that with AI, like the playing field is so much more level where you don't necessarily need to have past work experience to be able to be good at something. So I think now we're measuring more of like adaptability and someone's like hunger to learn, and how
Right.
much they're able to adopt these new tools. And that's why going back to the start about vibe coding, if that we see so many individuals like showing up and learning amongst peers, right? And when you have that supportive environment and you're able to figure out like how to use tools like Claude Code or Cursor or Lovable to be able to build things and understand like how to prompt and how to set up the infrastructure so that you're building in a very smart and strategic way. Like it's a lot of those skills that companies are going to start to look for. We strongly believe in this new future. And it's like, how do you measure that? A lot of times that's like project based. And how much time is someone putting into it outside of their day job to be able to build like a side hustle and like get users and get revenue out of it. And that just shows that, their ability to grow and learn in those fields. So yeah, I think that as you said, like what to measure is changing a lot. And we want to really spearhead like what that looks like
Yeah.
and make it a lot more human driven rather than like semantics based.
Yeah, yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Yes, one of the things I like to ask founders is just who are some of the industry people that you're working with to get this product off the ground. Now, you mentioned, of course, a common name that people are familiar with nowadays, the CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman. That's one of them. But yeah, why don't you start off? Tell me about that story. I'm sure the audience would love to hear more about that. And then from there, is anyone else that you guys have worked with?
Totally. Yeah, so we were based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and one of our amazing mentors and advisors, Tim Griffin, we met at a Charlotte startup event, which is really small. And at the time, we were fundraising and had this term sheet, and it wasn't necessarily the best terms. And so we brought it up in this meeting and asked our mentors for help. And Tim was like, "Let me help you, and I can help." And he helped us with build our deck because he had gone through YC himself. He knew what investors were looking for and how to sort of speak that language. And then he, introduced us to his Rolodex, one of whom was Sam Altman, fund manager, and that at the time was Apollo Funds. And so we had pitched to a ton of VCs and got so many rejections. And at that point, we were just going to keep going because I think, especially when you're building a startup, it's like when someone gets it, like they just get it, and they know why you're building it, and they immediately have conviction. And so with Sam, it was a short 10-minute meeting where he asked a few questions. We didn't even need to. We sort of just introduce yourself and dove into questions because he had already looked at the deck. And at the very end, he said, "Okay, do you have any questions for me?" And the first question that I asked him is, why did you take this call? Like, what about neurodiversity is of interest to you? And I
Yeah.
think that's the unique thing about like being neurodivergent is you sometimes like not only have really deep questions, but also spicy ones. And so like,
Okay.
it
Yeah.
makes people think, right? And so, yeah, he, was like, after we asked those questions around like, do we go for global impact or stick to like the US to grow, things like that, he was immediately like, all right, I have conviction, and he bought into the mission. And so that's what led our, pre-seed round, which allowed us to hire our first teammates and kind of go full time on it. And it was unique because we weren't even based in San Francisco, which is kind of like the quintessential story, right? But we were East Coast and just trying to like make ends meet with working two jobs, and this was a side hustle. But yeah, that's sort of how we met, and he's been a really amazing mentor and guiding us on like different areas of advice, like how to build a board, having gone through what he went through, how to manage like team dynamics, especially me. I'm a very, I would say, unconventional leader. Like I don't lead with force, and nor does he. And so like just getting advice on, how to it's okay to be kind of a silent thinker in the room. You don't always have to be the loudest person, but if you're able to like articulate things and hire people that are smarter than you to help guide you, and that'll help form mental models, like that can make all the difference. So yeah, that's he's been helpful there. But then we've also been working with a lot of our clients. Like we're constantly meeting with customers, getting feedback on the app. Like they're screen sharing and showing us other tools like the LinkedIn's and Indeeds that exist, and kind of what they love about those tools, what they don't love about those tools, because we really want to make it like 10x better. So it's not just, hey, you can hire neurodivergence. It's more so like this is just a better tool to search from. And it just so happens that people on this platform think different and you can actually get unique talent from here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of how we've been going about building this.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's an amazing story. I mean, yeah, it goes to show how much networking, even within North Carolina, you might run into someone with with a lot of money in San Francisco. But did they require that you move out to San Francisco, or was that just like sort of a decision that you guys made personally?
They didn't, no,
They
so
didn't.
we
Okay.
Charlotte for a few years, and then I made sort of the executive call to move out here just because things were moving so fast with AI, and it's like I wanted to
Yeah.
be at the happening place of all of it. And so that kind of drove that decision. But I mean, he does, and a lot of investors recommend if you're building something, like be in an environment where that's possible. But I mean, North Carolina was also incredible to really allow us to focus
Okay.
and
Yeah.
just go, heads down, especially when you have a lot of clients all across the country to just like be on calls back to back and be able to build. So I think it's possible
Yeah.
to build from anywhere now, which is like the really beautiful thing.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to ask because I mean, it'd be nice. I was going to ask, like, do you think it would have been possible to just for anyone to start a startup in North Carolina or whatever state they're from. But yeah, since you're from North Carolina, what's the scene there? Do you see a lot of people starting startups? Is it like a rich scene?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a small and mighty scene, and it's growing, and
yeah,
there's incredible investors and supporters in those areas that want to come on to like really drive growth. So I would say, we were a big fish in a smaller market, and that's
yeah,
like more possible. And so, yeah, I mean, the support we got was amazing because when you're building something big and you have people who are very invested in that local community, like that can make a huge difference. They're also more willing to give their time and kind of guide you and support you. So I think, yeah, there's a scene there. There's a scene in a lot of like smaller up and coming cities. Like it just depends on like the startup story and experience that people want. And especially if you're building in like and who your users are and what you're building for. Like in finance, maybe New York makes sense. In government and federal tech, like DC makes sense.
yeah.
So it's totally like up to the founder, like what journey and clientele they want to attract.
Yeah, yeah, no, I often wonder myself. I mean, do I make the big trip out west, out to Silicon Valley and, leave New York behind? But then I don't know, New York seems, so bustling. There's so much going on. So I love New York City, having gone to school in this area. But I do wonder, am I missing out on a lot that's going on out there? So I'm always asking the guests here, to get a sense of what the current pulse is for where you need to be. But yeah, thanks for the feedback there. Do you have like a core mentor or anyone that's sort of like showing you? Of course, you mentioned Sam Altman, but I'm sure his time is limited. But is there someone that day to day is like really helping you kind of forge your path through this startup journey?
Ooh, so many. I mean, our company is literally named Mentra, so we definitely believe a lot in mentors.
Yeah.
And I think at different stages, it's been different people. And, in the past, like we have leaned a lot on our investors to help us sort of frame our, newsletters and updates and even our board strategy, even though we have like an informal board, but kind of like how to position ourselves in the market. In terms of like day to day, I mean, now that we're in more of a GTM focused mode, I mean, we've had a lot of product advisors like Seth Radman from Georgia Tech, who I went to school with, is like a huge like LinkedIn voice on product. In the GTM side, we've been working with a lot more like influencers. And have a ton of mentors there to really understand, okay, how do you take something to market? How do you get distribution going? Because really with a startup, it's like all you like what's most important is like product and distribution, right? Like, do you have a good product, which now is easier to build than ever with all these tools? And then distribution is key of like, okay, how much user acquisition can you get in a quick time frame to be able to show that there's like a need here and value and growth? And so I wouldn't say there's necessarily one person, but more so just like leaning on a community of people um, at different stages. I mean, like every
And that
single
makes sense. Yeah, yeah, that's a smart way to do it. Of course. yeah, there's all sorts as a founder, there's so many different facets of starting a company that it's nice to have a mentor in each space, whether it's, marketing or the tech side of things. So it's good to have someone in each of those spaces. Yeah, next question. What do you see as the ultimate vision for Mentra? I know the idea is to focus on people that are neurodivergent, but then I did hear you mention that you don't want it to be limited to that, but sort of be, a great platform that's good in its own, just for anyone that's trying it out. And then also it happens to be very accepting of anyone with a different way of thinking or style of doing things. And so, what's the ultimate vision for Mantra?
Yeah, I mean, we want to have, I mean, 1 in every 5 humans are neurodivergent. So we see the market for this being huge, not just to find jobs, but we really want to build a community around thinking different. So whether that's finding your next co-founder, building your next app, getting your next even like life partner. There's like so many ways that
Yeah.
community facilitate those goals. And so it's really building an ecosystem around like being different and uniting in those differences. Enterprise, like capitalistic for a lens, I think our goal is to get every Fortune 500 company on the platform and hiring.
Yeah.
And we really think like that's how you change up systems, right? It's not by like bringing in homogenous groups of people into an organization, but it's like bringing in people who come from a different background and bring a different perspective. And so that way, and then I think like the long-term vision is like, how do people not stay in survival mode, but live in this post-scarcity kind of abundant world, like featured in Star
Yeah.
Trek?
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of that is like, first, people need to have the opportunities. And as someone who has had opportunity and been blessed to have been born into a circumstance where I could go through an education process, could get a job, could start a company, not everyone has that opportunity. And so it's like, how can we build bridges so that people who are hungry have the pathways to get to their dreams, and making that easier for people so that they're not kind of focused on putting food on the table, but they're actually like tapping into that.
Right. Yeah.
That's kind of like the long term
Yeah.
vision there. And what I said at Grace Hopper was turning a disability into a world filled with possibility, so that our physical
Tagline.
limitations, yeah, they aren't
Yeah.
necessarily blocking us anymore because technology can be that bridge.
Yeah, yeah, you mentioned that 1 out of 5 people are neurodivergent, and even before you said that, I was thinking at the back of my head, like, to some extent, you could maybe consider everyone to be neurodivergent in the sense that, I mean, there's all everyone has these things that they realize, they don't wanna share with everyone because they think that, people would think it's weird because it's a unique thing that they do, different than anyone else, and so but like I said, we hide a lot of those things. We kind of try to conform to what's going on around us, and so one of the things I was thinking about is it may be that 1/5 are classified as neurodivergent, but a lot of people aren't, you know, they're afraid of the stigma. So do you see anyone, hesitant to join because they don't want to be labeled as someone that has, a certain, something that might be seen as a disability? And if so, how do you get past that?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and it's definitely a controversial topic right now. It's interesting because a lot of historically, employers have discriminated against people with disabilities, right? It's been
Right. Mhm.
something that works against people and not for them. And I think what we're learning and leaning towards in this new era is that, like the whole administration right now is focused on like getting people in this country, in the United States, employed, right? And if 85% of autistic individuals are under or unemployed, then like that is not going to happen unless the systems change and the environments change.
Right.
And companies are also being incentivized and are getting the support to do this, and build that inclusive infrastructure. So it's only a matter of time, before companies are like, okay, it's not like we need to be upskilling our talent in our companies and outside of our companies because we literally have a talent shortage. And so we have to work to include everyone. And so once, as that happens, a lot of these factors, and that's why we call them like challenges that folks have, not necessarily like something that's wrong with them, but it's just something that the environment has like placed an unnecessary hurdle, for that individual to overcome. And if we just take that out of the way, then like we can see exponential performance. And so that's why like I think the world is leaning a lot more to these project-based outcomes, looking at like portfolios,
Yeah.
GitHubs, and what people have actually built, because that speaks so much more than how someone can present themselves at an interview. And yeah, it just allows people to really be more like strengths focused in this new world. And so like that's what we're trying to do is really change the language around it too, because it's like a
Yeah.
lot of these are like neuro exceptional strengths. For example, someone who is blind might have an exceptional ability to hear
That's
things,
true. Yeah.
and that part of their brain has grown so much, and that could be incredibly helpful for certain types of roles. And in fact, they could outperform other peers, right? So every role has a different skill set that it needs, and it's not necessarily, a detriment to have a different ability. It's just different. So that's
Yeah.
like what we're trying to change in society. And I think I mean, I'm seeing it happen. Even on TikTok, like people are
Yeah.
opening up about these things, being more vulnerable.
I
Gen Z
think so. Yeah.
percent identify as neurodivergent. So it's just like the future we're about to live.
Sorry. What was that stat?
Oh, Gen Z, like
Yeah.
80% identifies
Yeah.
neurodivergent.
Yeah, that and a lot of people, and I think it's just something that every generation likes to do to the younger generation. They criticize Gen Z, but no, I've noticed that too. That Gen Z is very much more open and honest about themselves and what their interests are and how they think about things. So I think that's definitely cause for some optimism there. You mentioned that there may be some government incentives to sort of that you guys can work with to encourage companies to adopt this and hopefully eventually try to push past like any kind of stigma for someone signing up for this. Is that something that you guys are planning to do in the future, or have you already started working with
Yeah,
certain?
totally. I mean, just for some stats here, like federal budget for AI monetization modernization right now is $36 billion. And then there's a
Oh
lot of
wow.
these 503, 508 audits that are happening, and huge like gaps in talent, even in like cybersecurity. So there's definitely a need from the federal side to like advance the infrastructure around hiring and inclusive hiring as well. So that still exists, and there's still like calls for RFPs in that space. And then for
Wow.
cybersecurity, there's like 3.5 million unfilled cyber roles right now. And so there's like a huge gap there, especially with, AI agents and enterprises adopting agents and those being trained on enterprise data and like making sure that's secure. Like there's just a ton of need for that. And then also like higher education and workforce transition programs. Like right now, we all know that college doesn't actually like it's a great place to learn about yourself, but like is it tailored to getting a job? Not necessarily. Like they don't all necessarily directly land to job outcomes, right? So yeah, there's a lot of investment there as well. $2.5 billion in federal funding for digital career technology. So there's like, a huge gap there as well. So we see like this is, competitive positioning around like where we can fit into these systems, and also like to encourage people that they don't need to follow the traditional path. Like you don't need to go to school, get a job. I mean, that's a great path to follow. But even if you don't follow it, like there's ways to get into your dream job regardless, as long as you're like going online and doing boot camps and getting certificates and learning the skills
Yeah.
and show skills. Like there are paths for everyone. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's definitely true. I mean, yeah, the more I think about it, the more I wonder, like, is it even necessary for many people? I think some people should go to college, but a lot of times, like today, I just saw a headline where the youngest person ever, she passed the bar exam at 19, and then now she's starting as a lawyer, and didn't go to law school, I guess, or that as far as I could tell. But so it's like, yeah, if you just kind of train and study one thing that you're passionate about, then it's kind of more of a like a I'm sure there are things that you're missing by that kind of classic university diversified education, but yeah, there are other paths that you can do if you know you have a certain skill set or something that you're passionate about. We
Totally.
don't need to spend 70K a year to do it.
100%. And actually, I'm not sure if you've heard of this term special interests that a lot of neurodivergents share,
Okay.
where it's like a skill or something that a neurodivergent's like super interested, where they'll go above and beyond. Like the classic one for autism is like trains, right? Where someone will like
Okay.
study
Yeah.
all the national maps and know the entire system at the back of their hand. But there's people that like, I mean, I'm neurodivergent, and like my special interest in like neurodiversity and inclusion and disability rights and advocacy has like led me into this path, and I could speak about it for hours and hours and hours, and that has allowed me to excel in the careers I've had in the field of accessibility and UX and design. So I think, like, if people lean more into those special interests, especially the Clifton Strengths Finder talks about this, where if you index on your strengths instead of trying to
Yeah.
compensate for your weaknesses, like, you'll do so much better.
Yeah,
Um,
it's I think that's true, yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, I found myself worrying too much about my weaknesses, and then I do make progress in those areas, but then when I look back, it's like, "Oh, I could have just focused on the area that, like, that I was just naturally super interested in and, push that a lot further than focusing on the weaknesses." But yeah, no, that's definitely something, to think about. So this is are there other people doing similar, like, releasing similar platforms in the space? So I don't want to exactly call them competitors because, of course, you guys all have this common, pro bono goal. But are there other people that you're bumping into at all?
in the neurodiversity space is pretty few. In the disability space, there's other companies like Inclusively. They recently pivoted to a retention tech platform. There are upskilling companies like Making Space that focus on disability upskilling. There are consultancy models as well. Though we are one of the only ones of this kind that is like building this massive database in the United States and focused on neurodivergence in particular. So, yeah, we're kind of a rare breed, which is pretty cool. But we're excited whenever we
Awesome.
meet other companies doing something similar because, like, again, 1 in 5 people, right? So we really need a lot of infrastructure to make this work globally.
Yeah, no, a lot of times when there are more, when it's not oversaturated, but there are, like, other people doing it, it helps get the word out there, and so that when you're trying to introduce the concept to someone, they've heard it before, so you don't have to completely, like, create, from nothing, the idea in their head of what this is and how it might be helpful, so it's nice when there's some people in the industry, but then not too many. But you mentioned, how you're building that database, and of course some of the information that people put into their profile, since it does relate to certain neurodivergent tendencies. Do you have to be HIPAA compliant with this information, or do you keep it as more of like a non-medical type of app?
Non-medical, it's totally optional. Folks can disclose
Okay,
it.
yeah,
We will. And then, yeah, we are like ensuring we are compliant with like
yeah,
cybersecurity, GDPR, all of it. Though it's, yeah, at the discretion of the user if they want to share, and
got it.
employers get access necessarily to that data on a one-off basis. It's more of like holistic dashboards if they want to see what percentage of their pipeline,
I
is
see.
autistic or dyslexic. They can kind of request that from us, but it's something we take very seriously and keep private.
Got it, got it. That makes sense. What do you say has been the biggest, challenge so far for you? Starting a company, it's always, one challenge after another, but is there one that sticks out to you?
Yeah, I would say like finding it's ironic, but finding good technical builders, especially for non-technical people. I mean, I study computer science, so there's so much more to it. That definitely helped me a little bit, but I would say like I've just been working with so many different builders to like make this platform possible, especially when you have a clear vision, and being like a really good PM to manage and oversee and like articulate what the vision is has been interesting. And also, I mean, I think like sales, selling to enterprise, especially as a like out of college, you sometimes have some imposter syndrome there of like, will people trust me? Will I be able to
Yeah,
deliver? Going to be of quality? Though I think just showing up consistently, doing the work, and actually like constantly iterating and taking feedback and making it better demonstrates to anyone, regardless of enterprise or SMB, that like you're capable of doing it and doing it well. So that's been like an inner growth
yeah.
journey as well.
Got it, got it. And so you mentioned getting good computer science, programming talent. Do you find that that's like a helpful firsthand way to see like what's it like getting talent, and then so to use that as feedback for how to design your platform in order to for people to connect with companies and get jobs?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, looking
Mm.
at what people have built, understanding like I mean, we've integrated with one of our partners, GitRoll, that actually does a score on how strong someone's like GitHub is, what kind of coding languages they use, are they more front end heavy, back end heavy, etc. So we get a lot more like quantifiable metrics around someone's skills, which has been really helpful as well. Because yeah, a lot of times like you rely on the hiring manager to evaluate or the recruiter, but the recruiter might not be very technical. So yeah, definitely firsthand experience to make sure we're doing it right for our clients.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's nice. It's always nice when whenever, the problems that I'm working on align when it's sort of like I can work on 3 of them at the same time, so it's nice that way. It's when things line up nicely. And what do you say are some of the most valuable insights that you've gotten so far? So if there's someone else listening right now, if they want to start something either in a similar space or even just any kind of startup. What have you learned that you think you could pass on to them and help them avoid a pitfall here or there?
I would say, like, number 1, always come into an interaction with some really solid questions, which you probably have done in this interview, um, and, like, really know what they're because that helps you identify, like, this is where someone excels at, and this is where I can learn. Also, when finding mentors, like, this is, like, probably people have heard this before, but find someone who already embodies like the desired trait that you are looking to embody and then understand like how they got there. Also, AI is amazing to as a mentor even. Like you can prompt it to say like, you are B2B SaaS sales expert, trained on like these principles written by this author, give me a step-by-step roadmap of how to get to X, Y, and Z goal. So definitely leverage AI. I mean, I couldn't have done it without AI, especially like as a very small team and having recently taken on a lot of the operational roles on our team.
Yeah.
It's just been like I have agents for every single operational task that
Oh
have
yeah.
all like historical data trained in it. So anytime like I have to do a task again, I'll just resurface that agent. And it just makes life infinitely easier. So definitely create,
Yeah, absolutely.
great agents.
Yeah. And is there a certain platform that you use or a certain AI that you use that you found most helpful?
I mean, I just use ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Played around with Claude. I know Claude Code is amazing. I've heard Grok is pretty good too, especially for coding. But yeah, I
Yeah.
am true and true Sam Altman fan. So
There you go, there you go. And are there certain like some things and this will be probably my one of my last questions here. Are there some things that you found are particularly helpful with the AI versus like some things that, right now they're not as good at, like they seem good, but then when you dive deeper, it's like, oh, it's actually doing some hallucinations or it's making some mistakes here and there. Are there certain like niches that you found, oh, this is really like a really high ROI that the AI is giving me that allows me to be, yeah, like a next generation founder.
ooh. I'll think on that one. I forgot to mention another
Yeah.
tool that I use a lot, which is Comet by Perplexity, and it's a
Okay.
new browser. And why I love it is because it actually acts like an operator that controls your screen. So if you log into a platform and you say like, "Do complete this operation for me," it'll actually do it on your behalf, which has been amazing because then you can run so many different tasks at once.
Okay.
And especially for those tasks where like, you have to navigate a complex portal and you have to find like where your billing or whatever subscription is, and you can just be like, hey, find it for me, and then go do something else while we're working in the background. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
I will say though, it's hard to rely on those tools. So going back to your question of like where it hallucinates, because sometimes I'll say like once I was like, hey, complete this payroll for me. And everyone got paid $0 that payroll because it didn't
Yeah.
like approve the hours.
Oh man.
So
Yeah.
so it's
It's
like
good at cost savings, right?
right,
No, I'm
yeah.
just kidding.
Yeah, so you definitely have to, like, audit and make sure, there's a human check in there sometimes at some points,
Yeah.
and that created a lot of duplicative work for me later, but yeah, I would say, like, don't rely on it entirely, but have
Right.
human checks in place for sure.
Yeah, it's a good way. I feel like a lot of times we hit kind of like a writer's block where it's hard to generate ideas, and I've found that's very helpful for with generative AI. It's very good at generating stuff, and then we can think like, okay, that was a good way to start things off, and then let me adjust things here and there. So that's kind of like a general use case that I've found helpful. Are you a solo founder or
I am,
you are?
yeah.
Okay, so that's one thing I'm thinking about when you say, you're heavily leveraging AI is that I keep, wondering, is this, like, kind of we're moving into a stage of startups where now there's gonna be a lot of solo founders because AI is so, there's so much leverage that it gives us, so, I myself am currently a solo founder, so I hope that's the case, but, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Oh, and then you were talking about writer's block too, and Whisperflow is an amazing tool. I'm good friends with the founder Tanai and his team, and they have like totally exploded with their like voice to text features. And
Oh,
so
okay.
if you have an idea, it's like again reducing that latency where you can just like voice it into ChatGPT and instantly like create outcomes.
Yeah,
Yes, I think like in the future we're moving towards like data really is going to be a moat. And as much as we're kind of recording and learning and transcribing like what's happening around us, like that is what's going to make us infinitely more powerful. So tools like that are great. And then yeah, being a solo founder, newly for me, would not have been possible without AI. And
yeah,
also like I've just noticed the amount of hours I've had to spend at a computer, and
yeah.
like managing my health and my spine and like all these other things, like
It's
reduce
true.
so much more.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it truly is a sacrifice starting a company, there's no doubt about it. Like you said, even health issues, my back also, I've had issues, and it's definitely it's no joke, but yeah, it's definitely I know in your case, I mean, if you can really connect all those people that are getting, shut out of different industries, and it'll make a huge difference in their lives and get them past, the challenges, as you mentioned, they're facing, so yeah, I look forward to seeing Mentra, continue to grow, and I hope,
App Store.
oh, that's awesome. Yeah, is there a release date yet, or
No, so yeah, we have 1.0, but we're about to launch 2.0 on the mobile app on the App Store in the next 2 weeks here. So
oh, that's awesome, exciting.
as it
Yeah,
comes out.
I'll download it and I'll check out the new version. Absolutely.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Mentra manatee experience. So your AI agent is this adorable little manatee that's your
Oh,
career companion
nice.
that will like prompt you, keep you motivated and drive kind of outcomes for you in your career path journey.
That's great. That's incredible. Well, yeah, thanks, Joka, for taking the time to come on to my podcast. It's been a pleasure, and I can't wait to see what Mentor does.
That's the manatee. Thank you so
Love
much.
it. Love it.
Thanks, Brandon.
Great.